So I've been given an Apple Silicon M1 MacBook Air to develop SharePoint on. Is it possible? Yes, it is. So I've been concerned about this for quite a while. Will I be able to develop SharePoint using an M1 based Mac? Well, I'm pleased to say that you can, and I'm going to show you how. Let's dive straight in. So the first thing we need to do is install Node Version Manager. Now, in order to do that, we need the XCode tools. Now, the command line tools have been compiled especially for the M1 chip, so we need to make sure we get the right versions, and thankfully it's very simple to do. So what we need to do is, I think we can do it from a root folder, but just to be sure, I'm going to navigate to Applications, Utilities, just to be sure. And what I can do here is I can type Xcode select -- install. So by typing this, it will go off and install our command line utilities. This can take quite a while. It took me about 15 minutes and I had quite a good connection, so allow some time for this. Go make a cup of tea. Anyway, here goes. So now that's successfully been installed, we need to install NVM. Now, as you'll notice, this uses the ZSH command line. So Zeesh, as it's known in America, we would say Z in the UK, but I suppose it makes sense to call it Zeesh from now on. So this is a default command line scripter used by Big Sur. Now, I'm from a Windows background, so I don't know too much about this, but I know that this is a scripting engine, and from those from a Unix background, you'll be used to things like Bash and all kind of scripting things like this, but it's using Zeesh in here. Now, it's a default shell used by Big Sur, as I said. So Zeesh uses a resource file. This is called every time that the terminal opens. But the resource file doesn't exist by default, and it's very important that we create this as it's used later when configuring our environment. So in order to create one, we need to use the command touch, which basically means create a file if it doesn't exist, and we need to use the tilde character, then /, let's delete the extra one there, and we have to type .zsh, Zeesh, rc, so the Zeesh resource file, and let's create that. So now we've created that, what we need to do is download NVM. So we need to find the latest version. So here Google is our friend. Let's search for NVM, and it should take us straight away to the GitHub page for Node Version Manager. And if we scroll down here, it's got some great instructions on installing, and you'll see that the latest version at the time of writing today is version 0.38.0. Okay, so what I do is I copy that, I go to my terminal, and I install. So now NVM is installed, let's look at all the different versions of Node available to us. And we do that by typing NVM list-remote. Now, if I check on the Node website, I'll notice that the latest version of Node, the LTS version, and the one that's supported by SharePoint Framework at this current time of recording, which is 1.12.1, is 14.17.3. So all we have to do is type in NVM install and then 14.17.3, and it will go off and install that. Now, be warned, these binaries are not built for the M1 chip, so it may take a very long time to install this. In fact, you may even want to go off and download the package from the site as well and install that as a double measure of installation protection. But however, it does work. Okay, 16 onwards, Node 16 onwards are built natively for the M1 chip, but it still works. So bear with it, install it, and at the end of it you'll be able to do this. If I do NVM use 14, you'll see that it will bring in my installed version. I also have node 16, so I could do NVM use 16, and that's installed 16.4.2, and then we can go back to 14 to use that. Other things you may need to do when you've installed it for the first time is configure GitHub, for example. So you may have to provide the username and the email address of your account. That can be used for when you're pushing and committing to Git. So the next thing I want to do is install the development environment, Visual Studio Code. And there's one especially built for the M1 chip. Let's have a look. So if I go to the download page for Visual Studio Code, you'll notice that under Mac it now has Apple Silicon. And you can download this and it will work just like any other version of Visual Studio Code. So let's do that, and it will start downloading that for me. I can drag that into applications and I can use it as I would before. So now we've installed Visual Studio Code, let's give it a run and see what it looks like. So here we are, and if I go to the About, you can see it's running on an ARM64 for Apple Silicon there, so that's cool. If I go to Terminal and do New Terminal, I'll do the command arc, which tells me that I'm running ARM64, which is great. And now we can just go off and follow the setting up a development environment video to allow us to install the SharePoint environment, and you're good to go. Out of interest, because I use other kind of web development based on Node, I've also installed Docker for building containers, and that all works nicely in Apple Silicon. So I think we're finally there for developers with Apple Silicon. So please check the link above for installing the development environment. But essentially, if you go to the link below to Microsoft's site, you can just follow the instructions there for Node 14 onwards, and you'll be good to go. Well, I hope you found that useful. I'm using an entry-level MacBook Air, and it's so impressive. It's so fast for SharePoint development. So I'm really looking forward to getting more out of this machine. We really appreciate your support. If you haven't done already, please click subscribe and a notification icon. I'll see you next time.